Hello my friends, today I will tell you why nearly everything which NASA says is a hoax. You see, they said that they sent a nice robot called the Mars Observers or the Mars Explorer to Mars. And they sent it packed in a small capsule which was attached to a big rocket. And that rocket was so powerful that it flew for 15 million kilometers. Because Earth and Mars orbit the Sun, and the space is very big and very void. You have to understand how big and void is. The radius of this planet is around 6,298 kilometers, depending if you look on the equator size or the center of the Earth to the pole size. It is bigger on the equator. It is a little bit fat. I am a little bit fat. And Mars, the radius of Mars is around 4,080 kilometers. Now, the distance between Earth and the Sun is 148 million kilometers. 150 million kilometers. And the distance between Earth and Mars is between 50 million and 350 million, so 400 million kilometers. So, here rotate depending on the relative position of Earth and Mars, because they rotate with different angular speeds, and I have covered this subject. Why? All planets in the solar system must have the same angular speed, because the Sun pulls all the planets towards her with the same force. The constant of gravity is the same in the solar system. Therefore, in order to maintain the orbit around the Sun and the other focus point, because all the planets rotate into an elliptical orbit around the Sun, and black hole which lies at the other focus point, which has the same mass as the Sun. And we also have Nibiru, which is the brother of the Sun, or the husband of the Sun, which is a small brown star, and which goes around 3,600 years around the Sun, or maybe 5,400 years, depending on how long a year is. Because when it passes near Earth, it slows down or fastens up this planet. And so the big scientists at NASA managed to send a rocket or a missile, a very big missile, 50 million kilometers away. Of course, if you do the calculation, you will reach the conclusion that this rocket must be much bigger than planet Earth. If you take you just need to open a small stars and see what the densities are and something, and what is the mass of kerosene and how much fuel the kerosene produces if you burn kerosene and so on, or the oxygen. Let us presume that they have a miracle wonder man, a small god which makes a very efficient fuel for them. Although we have planes on Earth which cannot fly for 40,000 kilometers, which is the total length of the equator, or the total circumference of the planet. We don't have planes or rockets on this planet which can totally encircle the Earth. How can then we send rockets to a distance 10 times more, which is the Earth-Moon distance, 400,000 kilometers, or even 50 million kilometers to Mars? And so, the small robot reached Mars, and there is a small problem, because the distances of the planets vis-a-vis the Sun are wrong. They got it wrong. Why? Because if we conclude based on the laws of physics that all the angular moments need to be the same, all the angular speeds need to be set the same, then we reach the logical conclusion that Mercury is much closer to the Sun than we presume. Venus is much closer to the Sun than we presume. Earth is where it's supposed to be, and where I'm supposed to be, and Mars is a little bit farther from the Sun, and also Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto are much farther from the Sun than we presume to be. So, because the length of the orbit of the Mercury needs to be much shorter in order to keep the same angular velocity as Earth. So, if the orbit is much shorter, then it results that Mercury is much closer to the Sun than we presume. And hence the temperature on Mercury are not just 480 degrees, but 1,200, maybe 10,000 degrees. Because the surface of the Sun has a temperature between 1 million and 3 million degrees, and inside the Sun 10 million degrees, Kelvin degrees, but it doesn't matter. The difference between Kelvin and Celsius degrees is just 148 degrees or something like that. So, or 431 degrees. Let us presume that NASA managed to do this. And they know that the orbit is wrong, but they have corrected somehow, and they programmed a rocket with pinpoint accuracy, and they send it away with no course correction on a journey of 50 kilometers to Mars. And they reach Mars, and the small robot reached the surface. Of course, we will presume that also the craft didn't meet any small black holes or meteorites or other friendly space phenomena in its way, and it arrived safely at that destination. Also, because if you miss the destination only with 100 miles or 100 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers, you will not only miss the planet, you will miss the landing site. And if you miss the landing site, you can end up at the poles, for instance, or inside the volcano. Or the robot may burn up in the Martian atmosphere, because you cannot just drop the Mars observer like this. You must have a steep angle vector in order to allow it to approach the planet, not to be rejected by the planet. Because if the angle is too low, then the effect will be like this. It will be propelled with double speed outside of the planet, because it will bounce from the gravitational field of the planet. If on the other hand the angle is too steep, it will burn up in the atmosphere. So it must have, of course, the Martian atmosphere is not as dense as the Earth's atmosphere, but it is quite enough. No one was on Mars, so so the Mars rover landed in the Arizona desert. Did I say no? The Mars desert, which is red like the Arizona desert, and it began to scan the surface. And it sent us a nice picture. How did it send them? Well, the robot is still on Mars. It did not return. So the picture was sent via radio waves. Well, the problem with radio waves is that they dissipate very quickly. We don't have subspace transmissions like in Star Trek. So, if I have my cell phones and I am more than 50 kilometers away from a center, from which the radio waves are propagating, I will lose the signal on my cell phone. And this was a problem in Romania 10 years ago. So, even now it's a problem if you're in a mountainous region. So, the radio waves cannot pass through mountains. Maybe they could pass through 50 million kilometers of space filled with rocks and other stuff, not to mention the asteroid belt between Earth and Mars. Let us presume, well, in this case, because the radio waves are propagating a cone, the cone will be so big that it will link out not only this whole damn planet, but a lot of more. All the alien fleets orbiting the Earth, all the nation of Earth which have satellites in orbit will be able to capture the signal sent by the Mars observer. But unfortunately, only the guys at NASA capture. This is the same as the moon landing. Goodbye.